up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Emerson Latzia holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. We're brought to you by Wrangler, made for the ride of life. Save 15% on your first Wrangler.com order with promo code GOJO15. Got a great show for y'all. As always, make sure you start the week downloading, subscribing, rating, reviewing, leaving us that 5-star rating, and checking us out here live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on the DraftKingsNetwork.com, DraftKings YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, and more. Got a lot to get to coming off of a football weekend. Some very strange reaction to a college football player's press conference or lack of attending a press conference. Plenty of upsets around the National Football League. And, Dad, what we saw on Thursday Night Football last night, unstoppable force beats immovable object game. This is not a joke. The Broncos and the Vikings had both rolled into this one extra frosty, and the game largely lived up to it, Dad. We had a close game down to the wire where Russell Wilson ultimately is able to get his Broncos team back into the game. I heard on the broadcast they were talking about having a conversation with Viking safety Harrison Smith about Russell Wilson. And they said, you know, he's played Russ over the years, especially when he was in the NFC playing for the Seahawks. And the thing about him is you can have him beat the entire game. But he said Russ always has the ability down the stretch to get his team back in it. And what a prophetic nugget from that broadcast booth as Russell Wilson and the Broncos ultimately find their way back in and win this game.
You know, a few weeks ago, everybody kind of looking at this game saying, well, this is why they're flexing games now, because there's no way this will still be a standalone Sunday night game. And lo and behold, going into the game, Denver with a 3-game winning streak, Minnesota with a 5-game winning streak, the Josh Dobbs story, just how cool it's been. And it lived up. You're right. I mean, finally to have a game live up, be a 1-point final drive game that Minnesota has a chance to win it. What has been incredible to me, while both teams have really made a nice turnaround, is I'll pick a side and say this Denver defense has been playing some ball as of late. Now, they own the biggest win streak in football, does Denver, with 4 in a row. Starting out, too, with the Denver Broncos' first 9 drives, 5 field goals and 4 punts. So your specialist really got some work going on. They just could not get the ball in the end zone, and they didn't until 1:03 left in the game when Cortland Sutton did what is a highlight tape high point a ball in the end zone with a couple of players somewhat in the area of him. But it was a beautiful high point that gave them the lead for the first time in the game, I believe. So really impressive. Really out of both teams. Josh Dobbs is still setting records out there. So both these teams, and you sit there and look at the division. Denver's 3 games back at KC. We have to wait and see what they do tonight. And Minnesota, with that loss, they could have stayed within a couple games of Detroit, who pulled out a win over Chicago yesterday, but that drops them, I think, to 3 back from Detroit in this one. But still a really, really good game.
Hey, Senior, also during this win streak, you mentioned that Denver defense allowing just 17 points per game, and that includes a Week 8 victory over the Chiefs in which Kansas City scored just 9 points here, man.
It's been incredible how much they've been able to turn it around on that side of the ball. And I've said, and this might be the most useful thing that we can all do in analyzing football for these two teams for the rest of the season. We have got to pretend like that Broncos and Dolphins game never happened. Mm-hmm. Because there is nothing about it that we've seen since that has been instructive about either of those two football teams. That game, outlier. Funky stuff happens. We can all look back on it fondly and say we saw an NFL team score 70 points. But ever since that, whether it's by injury, production, or otherwise, the Dolphins have not looked like the greatest show on turf reincarnate. They've been a very good offense, but we've seen you can stop them. You can do things to slow that offense down and not get 70 points hung on you. And on the other side, the Broncos defense, with largely the same personnel, has gone out there and started to really affect good offenses. And make no mistake, this Vikings team, while it does not have Kirk Cousins or Justin Jefferson right now, we had still seen them do things that good offenses done in this early portion with Josh Dobbs. And last night, Dad, is kind of the culmination of this. It gave birth to the dumbest stat I've ever heard. Like, this stat is the biggest Captain Obvious moron stat that I have ever heard. And this is not a shot at the people at ESPN Stats and Information who provided this statistic. but merely that it exists, and we're going to act today at some point like it is revelatory. The Vikings now have a 51-game losing streak on the road with a -3 turnover margin. That's the second longest active losing streak behind the Patriots at 68. Of course, you're supposed to lose the game when you are -3 in the turnover margin, and especially on the road. And for Josh Dobbs, this is a game where we finally saw some of that newness manifest in places that turned the ball over. We saw a bunch of issues with the snap very early on in this game when he was under center. All the things that we probably expected 2 games ago when he first took over, but absolutely mean that you should lose the football game. So, Dad, you kind of mentioned their long-term trajectory. Did seeing that in that stage make you more or less confident? Like if you had to put chips behind one of these 2 teams to make a legitimate playoff push for a wild card spot on the back end of this season, did last night sway the way you thought about that?
Man, that's a tough one because for all the bad with Minnesota with the turnovers, the botched snaps, they're on a drive to win the game at the end. They almost made it through all of that. Denver, man, Mike, I mean, they're so reliant on that defense. The offense really isn't very good. They don't run the ball that well. They don't throw the ball that well. But you still say Russell Wilson, he's pulled games out. He did it again last night. As I said, Sutton's catch was the thing, though. He high-pointed it really well. It's tough for me to trust their offense, but I guess I could say the same thing about Minnesota, though they very well could be getting Justin Jefferson back soon, which gives them a big check mark to go along with T.J. Hockenson, who's been money without question. So I think even though it's Dobbs against Russell Wilson from the quarterback standpoint, the weapons that Minnesota has, I might like that a little more. But the best unit out of the 4, without question, has been Denver's defense. So that's the part. That's one thing we talk about with Cleveland is Cleveland, not having a quarterback right now, but they're going to be in it till the end because of their defense. And that Denver defense is kind of playing that way right now.
Yeah, and I would look at and say, yes, absolutely, Denver defense deserves some credit. I will say, though, the Vikings defense last night largely held that Denver offense in check for the majority of the night. We've seen blitzing at the highest rate in the NFL. Brian Flores on every play seems to just mix up the bag and then fire missiles at opposing offenses. But as far as the playoff concerns, if you look right now at the playoff picture, the Minnesota Vikings are currently in as a wild card. It's the NFC. Yep. That's the biggest get-out-of-jail-free card in this, is looking around at the rest of the NFC and the teams that are below them right now. The Green Bay Packers, who managed to pull one off yesterday but did not seem emblematic of them. That seemed more about the Chargers. And then the Los Angeles Rams, the Falcons, the Bucks. And with Justin Jefferson on his way back potentially, they said it's really just a conditioning and comfort thing for him right now, coming off the hamstring strain. He expects to be available for them next weekend. I would still be much more comfortable after this game looking and saying, I think the Vikings in this year's NFC have a legitimate shot to make the postseason, because despite some of the down from Josh Dobbs last night, you still saw, Dad, the things that have made him special. I think I saw a Ben Solak tweet. Josh Dobbs has the most expected points average added on scrambles. There is no more valuable scrambler in the NFL than Josh Dobbs, who threw for touchdowns and ran for touchdowns last night. 3 straight scramble touchdowns in 3 straight games for the Minnesota Vikings. So what he lacks in understanding of their offense and maybe the high-end production of a Kirk Cousins, Dad, he makes up for an extremely valuable skill set in the modern NFL.
He does, and I just love his zero fear. He just stands in the pocket. Before he scrambles, man, he just stands, and he'll take a hit if he has to. I will say, and I would imagine, Mike, you know which play I'm talking about because it happened early. Every now and then you run a play and you say, we're never going to run that play again, okay? Just get the magic marker and scratch that on the play sheet, and then after the game, pull it out of the game plan, throw it away, and never speak of it again. So it's 4th and short, right? I believe it was 4th and short for the Minnesota Vikings.
It was 4th and short.
Yeah, and Josh Dobbs is back in the shotgun, and T.J. Hockenson, the tight end, goes in motion across and stops at the center and goes under the center like he's going to take the snap. I'd seen that once before, and then he'd stay and keep in motion. So you figure, okay, he's going to take the snap. He's going to quarterback sneak it. He takes the snap. Everybody goes left. It's an option. And he option pitches the ball to Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs' game was almost over at that point. Kareem Jackson, who is going to get fined for that hit, and I can't believe he didn't get penalized in the game, absolutely smoked Josh Dobbs short of the first down. Dobbs had to go in the blue tent. He was able to come back and play. But, man, I saw that play developing, and I saw that hit, and I said, well, you will never, ever, 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 ever see that play again run by the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes, it wasn't even an option, Dad. They ran full-on toss crack with their quarterback.
You're right, it was.
Toss crack. They had pullers out in front for their quarterback, who got promptly waylaid because as mobile as Josh Dobbs is, he ain't a running back. And he found out the difference on that play. That's when Dad had to look so cool when they were installing it. You get that one, you talk about it in the meeting, and then you go run it in practice, and everyone's just kind of doing it half speed because you obviously aren't going to hit the quarterback. And everyone's like, oh, man, they'll never see this coming. And then in the middle of the game, reality hits like a ton of bricks. And now you're sitting there going, we probably shouldn't have done that for a quarterback that's already had some ball security issues since he came over. So I think we're both on the same page as far as these teams. The Denver Broncos, it's a great story. It's probably a great sign in their trajectory heading towards next season because all of this is supposed to be a long-term fix in Denver with Sean Payton and with a quarterback that you paid $1 million, billion, gazillion dollars to. Dad, I do want to look in the direction of another team that's always going to be tied into the Josh Dobbs movement around the NFL this year. The New York Jets. We're going to talk about a lot of teams feeling some real angst and frustration. We're at that point in the season where you've got a couple of coaches getting frosty in the press conferences, a few more names that we expect to end up on the chopping block. And Rob Saleh is not going to be that guy, but this coach has been steadfast in his support for Zach Wilson ever since Aaron Rodgers went down. And we've talked about how post-trade deadline, hey, man, that might just be the cards that you've been dealt at this point. But considering what we've watched from Josh Dobbs so far this season, both of the times he's moved around, having success and helping out his respective teams, and what we saw elsewhere around the NFL yesterday as the Cleveland Browns get a win with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but also announced that they're signing Joe Flacco to the practice squad there to provide some veteran depth for this team that just had to put Deshaun Watson on IR for the season. Dad, Rob Saleh and the New York Jets finally broke a little bit. We saw and heard from him post-game a little bit non-committal about quarterback in the future. Are you surprised that at this juncture it finally happened, Dad? Because we had talked just last week about the fact that there just might not be other options for you in New York, and I'm surprised that this is what it took.
See, I think once they decided early not to trade for a player, and I don't want to keep throwing Josh Dobbs like, how did they pass on Josh Dobbs? Listen, Josh Dobbs won one game in Arizona. Let's not make it sound like he was setting the world on fire to where, wow, we should have traded for this guy. Now, do I think they should have traded for someone or signed someone? Yes, they should have done that.
You don't think after what we saw early in the season where the Arizona Cardinals upset the Cowboys that he warranted a look from this New York Jets team and would have been an upgrade over Zach Wilson?
As I said, yes, he would have, as others would have as well. But I'm not going to point to them and say, man, you blew it on Josh Dobbs, okay? What I'm saying is you blew it on not getting another quarterback. We were all screaming for it then. But once you didn't do it, I would do exactly what they did. You throw all your chips behind Zach Wilson because you made that decision. A decision we all disagreed with, but once you go down that road, every week you can't question it then. You have to just say, this is our guy, this is our guy, this is our guy, until he gives you enough evidence or that breaking point where you say, okay, this can't be our guy anymore, and we got to that point. And we kind of all saw this one coming, but the Jets tried to go a different direction. So, yes, Josh Dobbs could have helped them. There's probably a number of quarterbacks that could have helped them, and they should have explored that, and they didn't. But I don't blame them once they didn't to not throw all the chips behind Zach Wilson and say, we're sticking with you, because that's the decision they made, and now that decision is over. You brought Trevor Siemian in, yet Tim Boyle is still the one that played. So, I mean, it is they obviously made the wrong decision by not doing anything at the trade deadline. They tried to live with it, and it just absolutely bit them. The interesting thing to me, Mike, is I think there was part of all of us that were kind of hoping that the Jets stayed relevant in the playoff hunt just to see if Aaron Rodgers really was going to come back. Now, you and I don't know where you were, Emerson, on this, but Mike, I know you and I didn't think it was going to happen. He wasn't going to come back. But that's the goal he wanted to work for himself. I'm sure there was part of a lot of people that were like, man, I'd like to see the Jets in it to see if this is really going to happen. We need to put that one by the wayside now, right? That's over. They're 4-6. The AFC, they're not going to make the playoffs. And you wonder if Aaron Rodgers is still going to want to prove to everybody, I could have come back, I can still play. Man, now you just need to sit that guy and say, let's wait till next year, because the Jets had zero shot with this offense.
Well, Junior, even for this week, talking Black Friday, the Jets are going to clash with Miami. First ever Black Friday game, by the way. And he was non-committal on who he was going to start at quarterback. Said he would make a decision on Monday, so today. But either way, I don't think the Jets can go back to Zach Wilson, right? No matter how poor the alternative is, you got to move on. It's over.
That's what we thought for weeks now, though. And to the point that me and Dad made, does Tim Boyle or Trevor Siemian really present a better option if you're standing up there in front of your team? I get the idea of changing up the things for the sake of change at times, but damn, that would have been weeks ago that you could have thought about that. Even back when you had options in, all right, why don't we do this before the trade deadline so we could have realistically made something happen? And God, just hearing you say that about the Black Friday game right now, because you know who calls the Black Friday game?
Amazon.
Al Michaels.
Yeah.
Like, this is Al, like, I don't know. Like, you know what it must be? Al Michaels had enough good games, like got to be a part of so many historic calls and so many big moments in my sports lifetime that the football gods just decided you've had too much. The sports gods just decided he had too much. And now this is the purgatory that he's been presented because, man, having Al Michaels have to call that game on Friday night seems cruel. I'm just going to say it. We're all going to watch. We're all going to look around. Thanksgiving weekend's one of the best football watching holidays on planet Earth. But my God, having that just crystallize in my head that now the will they, won't they Zach Wilson game is what Al Michaels is going to have to talk about in the open with Herbie. Dad, you've met and been around Al Michaels a lot more than me right now. I cannot imagine the very visceral disdain we're going to hear from that man.
Yeah, a lot. You know, it goes from the Miracle on Ice to this, you know, and last year's Thursday schedule. He's a man that you're right, that's seen an awful lot. I mean, I have no idea, obviously, what to expect in that game. That Jet defense is going to have to stand up so big against Miami. And for the Jets, my God, Mike, they lost another lineman. Mekhi Becton gets carted off with an ankle. I mean, this offense. While Zach Wilson has been bad, listen, he is not the only problem on that team, on that offensive side of the ball. And a lot of it is not the fault of the O-line. Getting hurt is getting hurt. You know, no one's out there trying to get hurt. So that has not added to this mix of dreck on that offensive side.
No one or nothing was busier or moving more yesterday than the injury carts, Junior. There was a bad day for injuries.
I know. We'll get to a bunch of those because, man, it was ugly yesterday.
Yeah, it was tough.
Aaron Jones and Green Bay, the really ugly scene for Joey Bosa with the Chargers. And it sounds like those guys might actually have a shot of being all right, but just based on the churn that we've seen. I know every year we say it feels like there are more injuries than normal, and this year it's probably because so many of them have been quarterback injuries, but it certainly does give you pause every single time it happens. So brutal stuff there. Brutal for Mekhi Becton, too, who had worked so hard to get back from all the injuries that have plagued him early in his NFL career. They talked a lot about that on Hard Knocks this season. I know he was one that Rob Saleh was really excited how much he had done transforming his body. So lots of news still to get to on the quarterback and coaching front that we've got from this NFL weekend here, including some very frosty press conference sounds. So why don't we get to that coming up next here? Mic'd Up Monday, going to be very interesting on this show as we're going to have the debate all day long between the Washington Commanders and the Los Angeles Chargers. Who is going to be up next looking at their coach and wondering how much longer they're actually going to be manning the helm for their present team? And, oh, by the way, is the best defense in the NFL really capable of lifting a rookie quarterback to the playoffs?
All right, back here on GoJo and Golic, everybody. It's a Mic'd Up Monday. It's presented by Wrangler. So let's dive into some of the sound around the league that went down following all of the action of Week 11 yesterday on Sunday. So there may have not been a team in the NFL here, guys, that needed to win more yesterday than the Cleveland Browns, as if playing the Steelers really wasn't difficult enough. Now without their starting quarterback, Deshaun Watson out for the year. You have DTR back under center, trying to avenge that ugly first start he had back in Week 4 against the Ravens. They ended up with the comeback, walk-off victory against their division rival. And here is DTR following that win.
They believed in me. They trusted me. I trusted my teammates. The biggest thing I was telling myself all game was just stay disciplined, taking one play at a time. There's times in that game where, if it was Week 4, I would have forced it and we had a tip pick, another tip pick, or whatever it was. Like I said, it's going to be night and day when I get out there. I've been working my tail off, and I'm just glad my teammates were there with me.
I mean, listen, it wasn't super pretty. In his defense, too, back in Week 4, he learned that he was starting that game, I think, an hour before it kicked off. But anywho, leads the team on that game-winning drive here, Junior, sets up the game-winning field goal, not including spikes as well. Thompson Robinson, 4 of 4, 39 yards on that final drive. And it backed up really a top 2 defense here that is definitely more than good enough to get Cleveland to the postseason.
Completely agree. And yeah, for DTR, this is like if you were trying to learn physics and you were going to do it by having to pilot the space station for your first rattle out of the box, going up against the Ravens and the Browns defenses in your first 2 NFL starts. You want to talk about the first time he plays a normal defense in the NFL, how it's going to feel like he just took the donut off the bat going up to the plate, because what he had to weather, on the other side. He was going against the Steelers defense. He has the Browns defense on his side. Phrased that wrong. But still, the Steelers defense, while numerically not the most daunting this year, we know traditionally still has some parts that are very good, still has some things that present a challenge in the AFC North of all divisions. And so, Dad, this is absolutely still a playoff team in the AFC right now. Yes. This defense is insane. Myles Garrett is absolutely front runner for Defensive Player of the Year great right now, because this offense got to play it close to the vest. Wasn't a dominant rushing performance, wasn't a high-flying passing performance, but it doesn't need to be when your defense is on the other side caving in the entire Steelers offensive outfit to the tune of Kenny Pickett throwing for 106 yards in this game.
Yeah, sacked 3 times in this one. Ugly game, just barely over 50%. Though DTR threw the ball 43 times. I know some of those were spikes. It's tough to ask your young guy to throw it that many times. You'd like to see their running game a little bit better. At least next week they won't have a great offense to go against, but they will a great defense. You know who they play next week? Denver.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Wow.
I mean, so another tough test for DTR on that offense against a Denver defense that has been money. But on the other side, a Cleveland defense, which is just incredible, against this Denver offense, which has real trouble getting into the end zone. So interesting matchup there again, though Denver right now, the hottest team in the NFL at 4 in a row. Cleveland, Mike, we talked about this last week. Cleveland definitely in it. In a deeper AFC, because of their defense, you're going to be in every single game, and a lot is thrown on their shoulders. And I think each game, DTR gets a little more comfortable. That can only be good for the Browns. So the arrow is up there. Listen, this is still Baltimore's division to lose, I think.
Yeah.
Still the best team in that division.
Oh, yeah.
And if the
Pittsburgh
Chiefs lose tonight, Baltimore's the number 1 seed in the AFC.
Yeah. Pittsburgh just obviously not there offensively. And Cincinnati, wow. I mean, just really been a disappointment. So, but Cleveland right there. And then by the time you get to the playoffs, DTR has how many now games under his belt? So it could become very interesting for the Browns, kind of peaking at the right time with what they have. Not the quarterback that they want, which was a former top 5 quarterback in the league. And even when Deshaun was playing this year, he wasn't that. While he was getting better, he still wasn't to that level. But I'm interested to see where DTR is by the end of the year as this team, I believe, gets into the playoffs.
They did a bunch of the easy stuff to break in a young quarterback, got him on the move, used him in the design run game, got the ball out of his hands quick. All of it smart stuff Kevin Stefanski's doing to try and help his rookie quarterback do well. I agree. They are capable of winning a playoff game with that defense.
Yep.
And on the other side, the Steelers got some long-term questions to answer because Kenny Pickett just does not seem to have the juice. I know Matt Cannon has been the source of everybody's ire, but that is just not nearly productive enough. Emerson, what do we got next sound-wise?
All right, dude. So we are used to Miami head coach Mike McDaniel, right, praising his high-powered offense, and we understand why. But here he is after yesterday beating the Raiders, giving the nod to his defense.
We'll learn from the stuff that we can and get better from it. But ultimately, it's a team game, and when you do come up short offensively, you need somebody to pick up the slack. And to have 2 fumbles on the 30-ish yard line in your own territory, and have that equals 6 points, I believe, and then to have a couple very timely interceptions. That's what you have to do to win in the National Football League. You're not always going to supremely execute on one side of the ball or the other. So.
Yeah, those timely interceptions. We're talking Jalen Ramsey here. He had 2 of them. Like, it's fair to doubt the impact, Junior, of a nearly 30-year-old cornerback who's fresh off that extended injury-related absence. But without him, the Dolphins probably don't survive the scrappy Raiders yesterday.
No, Dad, that was probably my biggest takeaway, quite honestly, was, okay, Antonio Pierce actually has these Raiders playing some ball. Because regardless of some of the injuries we talked about going into this game, they stood toe-to-toe with a Dolphins team that, while they're not the 70-point Dolphins, is still a very good outfit in this AFC. So a huge tip of the cap to them. You just couldn't overcome 3 interceptions by your rookie quarterback who's going out there and playing. We talked about DTR here for Aiden O'Connell and what he's done. That also falls into that category of, hey, you saw some of those growing pains when he was pressed into duty, but Jalen Ramsey absolutely deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey does. And by the way, that last interception when he landed, I'd have thrown up right there on the field. He landed on the ball in his stomach. I mean, so when a dude like that, who's already has a lot of abs, gets hurt like that, just imagine what a fatty like us would happen if we fell flat on our stomach from about 8 feet in the air after he jumped for that ball. It was a fantastic interception. But, so I wonder the Raiders, the direction they're going. My God, Hunter Renfrow had 5 receptions. Hunter Renfrow, we finally, after a couple of years ago when he had, 1 million receptions, he's like disappeared on this offense. It seems Adams, Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer had 4, Renfrow 5, so that they're getting into a rhythm there a bit. The defense had been playing well. Is this more about, Mike, we think the Raiders are going in the right direction, though you have a young quarterback who's making mistakes? Or maybe Miami isn't what we thought Miami is. And we keep saying we get thrown by the 70-point game, but it's a 500 team they were playing in the Raiders yesterday, and they barely get by.
I'd say a little bit of both is my cop-out answer on that. TBD with the Dolphins. They definitely have been trending in the wrong direction, though. Let's get to the last bit of sound here quick, Emerson. What do we got?
Okay, so no one expected the Texans. You want to talk about rookies throwing interceptions here. No one expected the Texans to be 6-4 at this point, except really for the Texans and C.J. Stroud not really worrying about outside expectations right now.
We have expectations that we hold ourselves to and a standard we hold ourselves to, and we started that back in OTAs. And it's not about what everybody else thinks or what they thought we were going to be at this point. It's about what we go put on that field. So it's been really cool to play with my teammates and build week in, week out. And now that we put ourselves in a great position to go play for the division, man, it's really special. So this week is going to mean a lot. Got to go practice really hard and put another great weekend of practice. And around Thanksgiving, you want to be playing your best football, and I feel like we're doing that. And of course, you got to just eliminate the negative plays, but other than that, man, we're moving the ball really well. Defense is getting stops. It's the NFL, so every game is a fight and a battle to the very end, and we're going to just keep going.
Yeah, he compared himself to Steph Curry after that 3-interception game, saying, like, shooters shoot, and he's just going to keep letting it ride.
Yep, and he did just that. So it was almost nice to know that C.J. Stroud was human at this point. I think that was my biggest takeaway after the first half, where he had thrown for upwards of 250 yards and looked like he was going to maybe go on pace. I think we were doing the on-pace stats for over 500 yards in that game. We saw a little bit of humanity from him. The run game continued to show up against this porous Cardinals defense, and so the Houston Texans ultimately find a way and check another box.
Back here on GoJo and Golic, everybody. So Caleb Williams, we know, heralded as one of the best quarterback prospects that we've seen really ever. And yeah, he's not really playing perfect football, hasn't over the last few months. And we may have seen him play his last game already in college football before he takes the leap to the NFL. So this has also opened him up, GoJo, to criticism of a different nature. And such was the case like this past weekend. Ian Rappaport, of all people, calling out Williams for choosing not to speak to the media after USC drops their 5th game of the season to rival UCLA. This seemed a little harsh, did it not? I saw you tweeting about it.
Yeah, it just seems strange, Dad. So yeah, that's the backdrop. Is Caleb Williams is a guy who is a big personality in college football.
Yeah.
Being a big personality, being a young person, being a quarterback, doing that, being a black quarterback and doing that are all things that can have damaging effects when the losing starts to happen. And so for Caleb, who has been a big personality in all those ways, when he elected to not do that and not go to the post-game press conference for UCLA, I got worried. And my fears were then confirmed when he started to see tweets like this. And Ian Rappaport is an NFL insider. He's a newsmaker. He's a guy that generally is in the information business who all of a sudden seemed to offer something of an opinion here in this tweet that, Dad, was a little bit confusing to me given the source, but not all that surprising that people were going to look at this. And now, because Caleb Williams had faltered off of the standard of being the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback with the Patrick Mahomes comparisons, and now we're going to start to look for the ways to pick him apart. We had already seen that with his game where we had introduced the idea that, hey, maybe Drake May is more fit for the number 1 overall pick, or at least in the conversation. But, Dad, where are you on this idea of the criticisms of Caleb Williams' character starting to come into play because he didn't go to a press conference after this game.
I mean, it doesn't shock me at all. This is what happens now. It's the building up and then the tearing down, of he's going to be the number one pick. And then if anybody who's not going to be the number one pick, it's about building up. But if you're projected as the number one pick, everybody, it starts to throw darts, right, as to why you shouldn't be, or why I'm going to tear you down, or why I think you're not good enough to be the number one pick. This guy's the number one pick in the draft. It's going to be the number one pick in the draft. I don't think there's any doubt about that, and I don't think he's going back to school, like he said, because he can make more money. He may not like who has the number one pick in the draft. He's going to be called. His name's going to be called. He's going to be picked first, and he'll go to some team. Does he have a little bit of a different attitude? Yes. Is he the first quarterback or player to have that? No. So, but that's what's going to happen right now. He's kind of a magnet, and some of it he brings on himself when he paints his, fingernails, F you to a team, and, he's kind of a showboaty guy. So that's going to come along with it. It's all great when you're climbing the mountain and you become the best quarterback in college football last year and win the Heisman, and everybody says, here we go, can we get number 2? We haven't had it since Archie Griffin in the early 70s. And then from the Notre Dame game on, he starts to falter some, and everybody enjoys throwing the darts. That's what we do. We do this every single year. How quickly did it take us to the start of this NFL season to start ripping the quarterback class of Stroud, Young, Richardson, and Levi, to talk about this crew coming in of Drake May and maybe Shedeur Sanders and Caleb Williams, how it could be better. This is what we do. This is what we do. We start to break somebody down, and that's what's going to happen with Caleb Williams.
So I actually disagree with one thing you said. I don't think it's a lock that he's the number one overall pick. I think there's going to be a legitimate debate about him and Drake May from a football standpoint, because when you watch both of them play football, there's actually a lot of similarities in their game, in what they've both had to do to be successful at the college level. The difference is we don't know anything about Drake May's personality.
No.
I don't even know if I've heard Drake May talk at this point. I don't know how many people that are going to have the discussion publicly about Drake May and Caleb Williams have even watched a North Carolina game this year. I'm not talking about the people that digest the draft. I'm talking about the public at large. North Carolina in the last 2 years, Drake May should have been a legitimate Heisman candidate last year. And instead, because no one watched North Carolina football by and large, he went unnoticed. So you've got a weird situation that's going to happen where, like you said, Dad, you got a quarterback that's comfortable letting it fly there. A lot of people bringing up the fact that he sort of took a shot at Max Duggan when he was crying in the post-game presser after a game last year. I'm not saying there are things that Caleb Williams has done that haven't warranted some scrutiny. Hell, even this. Should he have done the press conference? Yeah. Probably just stand up there and take the medicine and life's a lot easier for you. Am I going to use that one moment? And this is the problem I have. People using that one moment, not anything they know about the player, not anything they've talked to people about the player, but people that seem comfortable using that one moment as an indictment of this guy's character and saying, your job when you're an NFL quarterback is to stand up at the press conference, and NFL teams care about this. NFL teams care about character when it's convenient. Other than that, they want to know, can you sling the rock? And this kid can sling the rock. And so they're going to look at him from that standpoint compared to Drake May. And that's going to be the determining factor. If they find out other things from talking to coaches or talking to the player and the process we're about to go through, great. But using this moment as a spot to indict the guy's character because he didn't show up and play the game that we all want to play, that to me seems like a step too far, Emerson.
Is this what we have to look forward to for the next 4 months leading up to April's draft here? There's no questioning his physical talents. That's undeniable. But now I feel like all these draft pundits, all of a sudden, and you have Rappaport apparently getting this head start, we're going to be wondering if he has the mental toughness to succeed in the NFL, especially after, was it last week or the week before, he was crying in the arms of his mom?
Yeah, this is Emerson. It's exactly what we do. It's amazing when somebody's done playing football and the time they put shorts and a T-shirt on till the draft, how things change. It blows my mind. What is my grade of Caleb Williams right now after playing football as opposed to Drake May? I like Drake May as well. I would take Caleb Williams number one. Now, we have to go through the process, and the biggest thing to me is when he sits with teams and they put him at the chalkboard, or the whiteboard or the video, and break things down that way. That, to me, is the important meetings with the NFL brass on what he sees and what he tells them. But for my money right now, he's the number one pick in the draft.
It is Emerson, yes, absolutely a preview of what we have to come, because we have let's call it what it is. You got a black quarterback and a white quarterback that are going to be squaring off in this conversation. You've got a quarterback that we know a ton about in Caleb Williams. Very vocal, a guy that's been all over the media, Heisman Trophy winner, and a quarterback that we know nothing about, by and large, as a national audience in Drake May. And that allows us to make Drake May anything that we want. You can project your value of what a quarterback should or shouldn't be on a guy who's not giving you much in his own. And that might change as we go through the process. But there are so many differences that pop up between the two that I think are going to at times make this a really ugly conversation depending on who gets involved. I'm not looking forward to that at all. But what I am looking forward to is, if we're going to talk about post-game press conferences, we had Senior Day in South Bend, and my man Sam Hartman put on a show. Listen to Sam Hartman after his final game at Notre Dame Stadium, one of the most accomplished college quarterbacks of all time, recounting one of the coolest moments that I've ever heard about on a sideline.
I will say a funny story, and this is going to be the last thing I say. Sorry, but I'm walking, and I'm not mad about this. This is incredible. I got a hot chocolate on the sideline. Yes, we have hot chocolate on the sideline. I was done playing, and I'm walking, and some girl, and if I saw her right now, I'd know who she is, but I don't know her name, threw a marshmallow from like the student section, like not the close student, like, I mean, it was like a 30-yard shot, landed in my hot chocolate. And I'm like, one of my teammates just did it. And I'm like, kind of like, oh, really funny guys. And then I look up, and this girl's going nuts, and she just dunked in there. And then obviously ceremoniously I chugged it, but.
Wow.
I love him.
Shoot or shoot, baby.
I love him.
Shoot or shoot. She made her shot. That's incredible.
Did you see what they did when Sam Hartman left the game? They played Whitney Houston's I Will Always Love You and put his face up on the video board. I mean, Emerson, anytime they would mention his name or Marcus's name, because they are without question the best head coach quarterback duo in the country, maybe in the history of college football, everybody goes nuts when either one of their faces shows up on screen. But to play that song and put Sam up on the screen, such a great dude, Mike. I know you and I got to know him pretty well through the season. I wish the season would have finished a little better. I think they'll win their last game, go to a bowl game, obviously, but I was hoping it would be a little bit better. But what a really, really good guy he is.
Mike, people are asking why he had marshmallows
We were lucky to have him
place.
on campus. It's a student tradition at Notre Dame on Senior Day going into the fourth quarter. There's a marshmallow fight in the stands. Dad, I'm with you. Very fortunate to have Sam Hartman, an unbelievable ambassador for the university in such a short time there. And also want to shout out J.J. Post from the Notre Dame Observer, who confirmed that the thrower of the marshmallow was none other than Notre Dame track and field medalist and senior Madison Schmidt. We got to the bottom of the other side.
Wow.
right, time to do that thing you like again here on GoJo and Golic. We're going to have a little roundup of the action around the NFL over the weekend. How about this one, dudes? For the first time since 1969, both the Browns and Lions won at least 7 of their first 10 games to start the season. If you throw in the 7-3 Jacksonville Jaguars, it's the first time ever that all 3 of the Browns, Lions, and Jags each won 7 of their first 10 games. Of the 4 teams to never reach the Super Bowl, the Lions, Browns, Jags, and Texans, they are combined 28-12. So I expect to see a lot of Jaguars, Texans, Browns, and Lions on your all-weekend team, okay?
You see what happened here, Dad, is this segment where we usually try and jam in other sports here. Emerson has tried to paint us into a corner to make it just an NFL segment and really just a Jags segment because he's a Jags fan who wants to come in here and spread propaganda. He grabbed the wheel and he hijacked the all-weekend team segment just to spread his Jaguars propaganda because he finally got to come in here with us off a win this weekend. It's so transparent.
Yeah, that's right, boys.
It's the only time Jacksonville will be mentioned, at least in my all-weekend team. So
okay,
I'm glad you got it in, Emerson, because I won't mention him once.
All right, buddy.
I was going to say, I think that's the unfortunate part of this is I don't know if either of us have a single Jag on this team right now. Because, Dad, I'm going to start off honorable mention all-weekend team here for our best performers. I liked not the fact that Max Verstappen won this weekend in the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which has become par for the course this season. It's the most dominant Formula One season by a driver in the history of the sport already in terms of overall wins, winning percentage, the whole lot. But Max Verstappen wins the Las Vegas Grand Prix in a week where he came up on Saturday after qualifying and was basically openly ripping the entire concept of it, saying that all the fans are there to do is just drink and hang out and watch their favorite musical artists. We're not doing anything to make them actually understand the sport and what we're doing and grow the game. Dad, that's the point we've gotten to where Max is so secure in his dominance on the sport that he's going to openly rip the thing that he's in the middle of and the thing the sport's trying to make work in the U.S. for the next decade.
Well, unfortunately, Las Vegas pretty much failed in this Grand Prix after the delayed practice round and now a class action suit against Formula One because all the fans had to leave for safety reasons and they were offered $200 in merchandise to shut them up, basically. It really was a failure there. And Max, you're right, he's the biggest thing there and just said, you know what, they went 99% entertainment, 1% actual race. And he goes, I love Vegas to come party with my mates. That's about it. So not enthralled at all as he yawn wins another Grand Prix event. My honorable mention is going to be, and this is got to be a strong group, but my honorable mention is a guy who threw 6 touchdown passes in the first half. Bo Nix from Oregon. Now, they destroyed ASU 49-13, 23-49-16, 45-71-16. Those were his touchdown pass distances in the first half. It's amazing. He's second in the country with 35 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels is first with 36. Only has a couple of interceptions. The Heisman race is getting very interesting now with Daniels and with Bo Nix, especially if they can get to the point and beat Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. Because Penix, his team won a good game as well, but his numbers weren't as good.
Yeah, this is a tough one, too. Kenny Dillingham, the current head coach of Arizona State, was Bo Nix's offensive coordinator last year at Oregon. So tough to see what you left and the starting point you're at right now. Obviously, brighter days ahead for Kenny, one of the better young coaches in college football. But, Dad, I'm with you. Bo Nix has been sensational. This Oregon team has been on the warpath since that Washington game. We will get to Jaden Daniels in just a little bit, his counterpart. But, Dad, for the all-weekend team, second team, I want to give this out in a quick shout-out. College Football Saturday Night, powered by Learfield, where me and Chris Hassel call games on the weekends, is heading to Washington for what we thought was going to be the final installment of the Apple Cup, Dad. That Washington team you mentioned with Michael Penix Jr. going to host Washington State in a rivalry game that got good news the other day. Washington and Washington State agreed in principle to add 5 years to the Apple Cup contract there, extending that rivalry through at least 2028. Obviously, Washington heading to the Big Ten. Washington State in limbo right now with Oregon State in the remaining Pac-2 with what they're going to do with their games going forward. But, Dad, as realignment has robbed a lot of people of some of these regional rivalries, it's nice to see both sides understand how important this is to the state and to keep this thing going.
Yeah, I'm happy they're keeping it going as well. Once the decimation of that conference and where it's going to go are those two other teams, Washington State, Oregon State, they're going to end up in a Mountain West schedule, as has been talked about. We will see. My second team is going to be the guy playing in the NFL that lives at home with his parents, Tommy DeVito. Three touchdown passes. He has 5 touchdown passes in his first 2 games. That hasn't happened for a Giant quarterback since the 50s, I believe. Tommy DeVito, gang, lives at home with his parents, threw 3 more touchdown passes. So, hey, and listen, the Commanders, they looked awful, obviously, in this game, but still, absolutely incredible what this DeVito kid has done. Nobody expecting this at all. No interceptions as well. And, oh, by the way, he was sacked 9 times in this game. We're not even getting to the Washington side of how bad they were in this, but had 9 sacks and lose a game. But Tommy DeVito, 5 touchdowns in 2 games. Good on you, my friend.
Hey, he's got more career games with multiple passing touchdowns now than Kenny Pickett. Congratulations. Yeah. And he lives with his parents, as we love to mention. And I'm jealous of that.
I was going to say, listen, you know what? At some point, we have to look at this and go wondering, all right, if he continues this level of production, maybe more NFL guys need to think about going back and shacking up with mom and dad. I understand it could make for a few awkward late-night encounters, but that's the risk you've got to take if you're serious about your craft. So, we digress. First team all weekend. Dad, you put Bo Nix down at honorable mention. I am going to respect our college football slinging large adult sons. Jaden Daniels had 8 total touchdowns this weekend. Damn. 6 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns with over 500 yards of total offense. And I get it was against lesser competition this weekend. I believe it was Georgia State they were playing or Georgia Southern. But this comes off a week, Dad, where a week ago against Florida, he had 600 yards of total offense and 5 total touchdowns in that game. I understand that the Heisman is just not an award where we can look up the final stats, but for Jaden Daniels, he has been on a team that we know defensively has struggled mightily and has carried them for a lion stretch of the back half of this season. Him, Malik Neighbors, this receiving core have been putting up bonkers video game numbers for Brian Kelly's crew down there.
Yeah, it has been really impressive what he has done. And he still looks like he weighs 110 pounds. He did it at Arizona State before he transferred. I mean, he's just a skinny dude, man. But absolutely getting it done. So it'll be interesting where this Heisman thing ends up. Michael Penix has thrown for the most yards. Jaden Daniels has thrown for the most touchdowns. Bo Nix has thrown the least amount of interceptions. So it's kind of all over the map here, so we'll see how it finishes. We know that Penix and Bo Nix are going to get last looks at this because they'll probably be in the Pac-12 championship game, and LSU will not be in the SEC championship game.
Daniels is the favorite right now, by the way. Minus 125 on the DK Sportsbook. Bo Nix plus 150. Then there's Penix Jr. plus 600.
And I have a feeling, and Mike, you're a voter, we can talk about this another time, that you wonder if last looks is going to be it for Penix and for Bo Nix. We will see. My first team in all weekend, it's the About Time Award. Jimmy Johnson is going to be put in the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor. This has been one of the biggest farces of all time that it has taken this long. And this is on Jerry Jones. And Jerry Jones kind of in a way admitted it. I mean, these two, they were money together back when he hired Jimmy Johnson back in 1989 after Jerry Jones bought the team, and then went on to have incredible success. And Jerry Jones felt that Jimmy Johnson got too much of the success, and Jimmy deserved all the success that he got. And that became kind of a wedge between the two, and how he wasn't in the Ring of Honor already had been one of the biggest jokes there is in sports. So finally, Jerry Jones has got over whatever he needed to get over to put Jimmy Johnson right where he belongs in that Ring of Honor, because he was in not a very long time with the Cowboys, really put them up the ranks and pulled off one of the greatest trades of all time with the Herschel Walker trade.
I agree. It was always this jockeying for credit between Jerry Jones and him. Is it bad that when I saw this announcement, because I was wondering why now, my first thought was, oh, something bad's coming out for the Cowboys. Like they're trying to make sure that they run cover for something bad that's either about to come out or happen there. Because otherwise, why now? Why would it have happened now? Why did Jerry Jones all of a sudden have some moral come to Jesus? My antennas are up.
the first time since John F. Kennedy was president, 1962 to be exact, the Detroit Lions are 8-2, and they did it in dramatic fashion on Sunday. And needless to say, the kneecap-biting Dan the Man Campbell was just a wee bit excited after the dub.
Guys, holy shit. We are a resilient team, gentlemen. We are resilient. We're going to find a way to win. They freaking came out and they fought us, but we fought harder. And we went and got the win. That's outstanding. That's division win number 2. I got one game ball. Give me this. All right, hey, listen, to make the rally that we did and to come back, man, we needed some stops. We get the stops. Offense, we go down, we strike. We need another stop, we get the stop. Hutch, where you at, brother?
I'm so proud of everybody, man. We got the shit done. Man, I'm really excited about this year. I think we're going to do some special shit, especially with the adversity we just dealt with, how we overcame it, man. So to keep pushing week by week. Let's go.
Listen, it's been a long time.
Dan wants to call him son so badly.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. He looked at him with a tear in his eye and said, "Son, get up here." That seems like we talked about it when they picked him, Dad, 2 overall. But what a perfect meathead pairing. Dan Campbell should probably win Meathead of the Year. I think we need to sanction that award around here and just to give it to Dan Campbell.
I'm not going to lie, though. That was the game ball he gave to Aiden Hutchinson. That's what I got out of that, right?
Yeah.
How it wasn't given to David Montgomery, I have no idea. David Montgomery was a Chicago Bear. David Montgomery averaged over 6 yards a carry and scored the game-winning touchdown for the Lions over the team he played for last year. I don't know how. I love Dan Campbell. That's the first mistake I've seen him make in a while, that David Montgomery didn't get that game ball right there.
It's because, again, he's all hopped up on meathead juice after that game there. That was like when Will Ferrell blacked out in the debate in Old School. Dan Campbell blacked out in that locker room. He has no idea what happened there. And he just realized, I need to give this game ball to my son because I love him and he's gone out here and done meathead things for me. You're right, though. David Montgomery revenge game. Absolutely huge stock up there. Dad, were you worried at all about the Jared Goff that we saw in this game? Because it seemed like we finally got a little bit of a taste of, hey, this is the Jared Goff that they moved on from with the Los Angeles Rams. The 3 interceptions in this game that looked like they were going to be the thing that ultimately undid them against Justin Fields' return for the Chicago Bears. I think is a reminder of there is a ceiling with Jared Goff. Like, I think for all the conversation we've had about Ben Johnson and what they've done with him and if anything's changed, I don't think ultimately, Dad, in meaningful moments when we get to it, you've got a drastically different Jared Goff. And to be clear, the Jared Goff you have is capable of getting you to a Super Bowl. Like, in the right circumstances, he can be a quarterback that does that, but asking him to transcend, I think, still might be outside of his purview.
It might be tough. I would agree with that. But now it was against the Bears. I was pretty impressed. Now, remember, they were down 2 scores, 26-14 with 4 minutes to go in the game. And they were able to come back and win this one. So there is a value to that, much like C.J. Stroud and Houston, who they've been incredible this year. And it was the Cardinals, the 2-1 team they did it to, but he overcoming 3 interceptions and that team being able to win that game. I like things like that, right, that you're able to overcome. And this one didn't look good for Detroit for a while. And you give the Bears credit for jumping out the way they did. So while Goff can hurt you and put you into trouble, he can also help and get you out of trouble as well. And remember, the game tonight, should the Eagles lose to the Chiefs, Detroit and Philadelphia are tied for the best record in the NFC. It's amazing.
I love this world we live in.
No, it really is. Emerson. Emerson brought up the propaganda about the Jacksonville Jaguars earlier in the show, but looking and seeing the 7-3 Jags, the 8-2 Lions, Dad, these franchises that have historically been, especially in recent history, doormats for a lot of other teams going out and being able to accomplish. We talked about this last week, for the Lions to all of a sudden be winning these close games. I am sure Dan Campbell's excited, because when he first got here, these were all the games that they lost in primetime. They were the almost Lions. They were the close Lions. They were horseshoes and hand grenades, and now they're actually going and capping it off in wins. And so, Dad, Jared Goff and CJ Stroud is actually a very interesting comp, not just because offensively we see maybe some similar things with, how much they line up under center, how much it actually looks like some of the older offenses. They got good coordinators in Bobby Slowick and Ben Johnson, but I still think CJ Stroud, the magic for him has been what he's been doing creating off schedule, and I still think that's something that is the lesser of the skill set for Jared Goff if we're going to compare and contrast both of those quarterbacks. And we've seen so much more of Jared that we feel like we know that right now. We feel like that's been reinforced, and so it was always going to take more for him to overcome that. But you're right in that he's good enough to be the quarterback on this team when they've got the rest of the war machine up and humming that can absolutely take them to the places they want to go.
So they play their normal Thanksgiving game this week against the Packers, a 4-6 team. And then they play the Saints, and then they play the Bears again. So, I mean, it is definitely in the favor of Detroit the way they're playing right now, though it was just a tough game with Chicago. I personally, I don't think the next one will be as close. But they're on a bit of a roll and can continue that roll.
What'd you make of Justin Fields in this game, Dad? His first return, we had seen Tyson Bagent staying in for him while he had the hand injury. Grip strength had been the question for him coming back and when he was going to get back on the field. Finishes 16 of 23 for 169 yards, which doesn't seem to or feel like it blows anyone out of the water. But, Dad, also, they used him a ton as a designed rusher in this game. I believe at least 14 of his 18 carries in this game were designed rushes, had over 100 yards rushing in the game, and it looked like the full tool belt back on display for him. Deep passing, working outside the pocket, and as a rusher, we said for Justin Fields, keeping his job in Chicago based on where they're going to pick in the draft feels like an uphill battle right now. But as far as him, whether it's with Chicago or another team right now, coming out after injury and having that kind of performance against this Detroit Lions team, that has to be stock up for Justin Fields no matter how you slice it.
Oh, there's no doubt it's stock up for him. It's just a matter of, is it a foregone conclusion already in the minds of the Bears? And they came out and said it would, one of these college quarterbacks would have to blow them away. But what else are they going to say publicly? They're not going to say, we're kind of looking at this. They're going to be behind their guy until they're not behind their guy. I agree with you. I think Justin Fields is in a big-time uphill battle. I think this was a good game for him coming back. I was all for him not getting traded and being the quarterback of the team this year to see where it was going to go. And it's kind of wishy-washy right now on where it is going to go. But as long as he doesn't get injured, he has a number of games to continue to show. Whether it's passing, we know he can run the ball, but when you get the mixture of the two, if he is the quarterback, I don't know if we'll see the same offensive coordinator back. That would be interesting if Luke Getsy is back, just like in Pittsburgh. Is Matt Canada going to be back? Going to be interesting, some of the changes that go on a little more behind the scenes than head coach and quarterback. But I think right now he's still fighting an uphill battle, but he certainly didn't hurt himself yesterday by any stretch.
No, it was really impressive. And when you consider that was his first action coming back from an injury, all the more so. And I'm with you. The future of this coaching staff is going to be in question for most of the year. I think the one thing that's not in question is whoever's at quarterback and who's ever coaching next year. DJ Moore is, everything you hoped he would be as far as bringing him over in that trade with Carolina. And I heard them mention the way that staff talks about him. I'd be very curious whether it's Luke Getsy or another staff coming in here. They talk about him like a running back once you get the ball in his hands there. After Deebo Samuel started to have his role in this 49ers offense that he did, people started trying to talk about Deebo Samuel types. And those are types that don't really exist. That's a rare skill set where you can do all those things. I do wonder if someone might start to give DJ Moore that little bit more varied role in a lot of those same gadget ways inside of an offense because of his unique skill set when you get the ball into his hands, what he can do after the catch each and every time. So just an interesting thing to kind of keep an eye on for a Bears team that is just really in evaluation mode, I think, as much as anything else, sitting here at 3-8 right now. And Dad, they're not the only ones. So Emerson, yesterday, for a couple of teams, felt like a rubber meets the road conversation in terms of the future of their coaches. And I don't know, Emerson, if there was anyone feeling more of the heat than Brandon Staley yesterday.
Yeah, dude, let me tell you what. So the Packers entering yesterday had lost 5 of 6 games, and the one win was against a quarterback who currently is not on the team they beat, which is Brett Rippon with the Rams, all right? So Green Bay, of course, beats the Chargers and Brandon Staley, who some say it's not an overreaction to say that the dude needs to be fired, and he was obviously feeling the heat after that loss to the Packers. Little angry exchange here with a reporter.
I have full confidence, like I've told you, and like I've told you from the beginning, I have full confidence in our way of playing. Full confidence in myself as the play caller, in the way that we teach, and the way that we scheme. Full confidence in that. We got to bring this group together and do it consistently, okay? And that's where it's at. So you can stop asking that question, okay? I'm going to be calling the defenses, okay? So we're clear. So you don't have to ask that again.
The Chargers have 5 losses by 3 or fewer points this season. Nobody else in the NFL has more than 2 here, Junior. Perhaps the Chargers, though, can have a late season spark with another coach. Ask the Raiders how that's working out.
Yeah, Dad, that's unfortunately going to be the conversation for the remainder of the year for the Chargers, is if or when they're going to pull the plug on this, because when you allow Jordan Love, who has struggled for a lot of this season in terms of developing the passing attack for them, when you have the Jordan Love career day, 27 of 40 for 322 and 2 touchdowns, that's going to prompt a lot of soul searching, especially on the back end of that defense that, Dad, we know had the injury to Joey Bosa yesterday up front, and a front seven that actually did a decent job stopping the run. Ultimately, that team, with all the preponderance of names that we know in star power, has yet to live up to it in a meaningful way. And that felt like a coach who understands and has heard the buzz and the rumors about his getting fired. Do you think they pulled the trigger on it this week?
I think it's soon, because what you do, and Emerson brings up the point, you get kind of a Raiders situation. Now, what I don't know, what we do know is how it was in that Raiders locker room with Josh McDaniels, right? Really long meetings. I mean, the attitude was horrible from everybody in there, and it was like a breath of fresh air when Antonio Pierce took over. A player, former player, players were all behind it. I don't know what the situation is with Brandon Staley in that locker room as far as how different it would be if you have an interim head coach that would take over at this point. But the bottom line is, when you're a certain side of the ball head coach, that's the side of the ball the expectation is to be really good, and then you hire somebody to take care of the other side. Brandon Staley is a defensive person. And right now, their defense is second worst in the league. Their offense is right outside the top 10, I think, at number 11. And I don't blame him to say, I'm going to keep calling plays. We're going to keep doing it my way. If I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired doing it my way. I'm going to get fired making the calls that I want to make. But he has to know the writing is on the wall. And we never like calling for anybody's job, but this seems like it's going to be a foregone conclusion, and it's just a matter of when. One of the things you do while you do it during the season is not only for that spark, and like I said, it got so bad with the Raiders that they felt like they had to do it, was you can start looking for a new coach. You publicly can be doing that. Now, who you look for, if they already have a job, you have to kind of do certain back channels and such, but you can openly be looking for a head coach. So I think that would be one of the main reasons to do that, is to be out front in looking for your next coach.
Well, and usually I think it's framed as some accountability too, right? He is the defensive play caller, so the defensive woes are on him in addition to everything else that happens as a head coach, and he said he accepts that. Now, I'm not going to pin the drops from yesterday on him or some of the offensive miscues necessarily, because we know that's not his fault. Keenan Allen dropping a wide open touchdown looking back into the sun in the middle of the end zone in a way that's just not emblematic of who he is, but is sort of where this team's at right now, Dad. It's in disarray. Kellen Moore was supposed to be this thing that helped jumpstart a team with all this talent that, if they stayed healthy, which is the Chargers question every year we ask and every year that gets answered by no, they will not stay healthy. Ultimately, we've wound up in this spot where they're walking into a situation, Dad, where I wonder if it's just going to get too ugly for them to ignore, because they play the Ravens on Sunday Night Football this weekend. And that doesn't seem like the get-right recipe for anybody to try and save their job. So very worried about that, but probably not as worried as I would be if I was Ron Rivera with the Washington Commanders, Dad, because that quietly was the ugliest football game of the weekend. We've had this conversation a couple of times trying to call that shot going into the weekend. You had one quarterback, and we've talked about Thomas DeVito, sacked 9 times, still threw multiple touchdown passes, lives with his parents, huge legend, wildly Italian NFL quarterback. But on the other side, you had a team of the Washington Commanders that sacked the opposing quarterback 9 times and lost the game. Like, Dad, you were on a great defense that had a lackluster offense at times in Philadelphia. I don't know if you guys had a game where you got 9 sacks and somehow lost. And this is after, by the way, at the trade deadline, you gave away your 2 best pass rushers, at least your exterior pass rushers here. You've still got really good defensive tackles, but 9 sacks after at the deadline jettisoning 2 of your better players, and the offense still couldn't go out there and stop turning the ball over long enough to win the game. Dad, I don't know what you do at this point, but it certainly does seem like Eric Bieniemy, who has been looking for an NFL head coaching job for a long time right now and is going to be sitting there as the offensive coordinator, might be in line to at least put the interim tag in front of his name soon, because it is getting ugly in our nation's capital.
Again, another defensive coach in Ron Rivera, and a defense that's 4th worst in the league overall. So again, there's more to just that number, I get, but still, and to me, that defense the last 3 years has been underachieving. Last 3 or 4 years, there's been one year where they played better, but for the most part, they've stacked it pretty well, especially on that D line. And now they gave up on that by trading Sweat and Young away. But on paper, they look like they would have that defense, and it just hasn't come to fruition. And again, he's a defensive coach. But I'll always say, just like I'll say with Staley, you're also not the coach out on the field. You're not the one missing plays and not getting it done on the field. So there's culpability for the players as well. But you're always talking about your coaches putting you in the best position to be able to win. And for the offense there, Bieniemy has that offense just outside the top 10 again overall, with a quarterback who has to ice down his entire body after every game because he's getting smacked around. Like, I think him and Shedeur Sanders, they could have a whole lot to commiserate about after the season about how much they've been hit throughout the year.
Well, they were all icing down, actually, their bodies after that game, because the hot water system failed in all the locker rooms after that Giants-Commanders game, and everyone was forced to take ice-cold showers.
Oh!
Yeah. That stadium just needs to be torn down to the ground. Isn't there's something that's always happening to it, like pieces of it like fall off and almost hit players, like it's crazy.
I was going to say, it almost took out Jalen Hurts the other year when he was going by out the tunnel. I think that's the stadium that's also had like the weird sewer water leaking from the top in
Disgusting.
it. So,
fecal matter everywhere.
FedEx Field, which has long been a candidate, and we've seen the local politics there trying to get a new stadium around there. But the ice-cold shower after a loss, you want to talk about adding insult to injury.
Yes, dude.
I don't know about you guys. I've seen all of, like, I don't know if it's Goggins or any of those dudes that are like social media fitness influencers who try and tell you to take the cold shower to start your day. I can't do it. I am soft. I'm a little beta boy, if that's what that means. But I am not a cold shower guy, Dad. I can't do it. I won't do it. So, I'll start my day with something else, but that's not how I'm going to choose to introduce myself to the world.
Billy, behind the camera here in studio, came in this morning and was like, I'm doing this military shower strategy now every morning. He gets in a cold shower for 30 seconds. He gets out, brushes his teeth, get back in for 30 seconds. Then you get back out and you do something, and you get back in and take a normal shower. I don't know. It's really weird and confusing.
Yeah, I'm not doing that either. Mike, let me ask you. So a game ends, we're all sweaty and stinky. You taking the cold shower, or are you just toweling off and putting a lot of deodorant on?
Oh, no, I'm still getting wet enough to take a shower after the game. Like, I saw, I think it was Ryan Fitzpatrick on Pardon My Take talking about how he went 2 weeks in training camp once trying to challenge himself by not taking a shower.
Okay.
I don't know for the rest of you, like in the skinnier crowd, and Ryan Fitzpatrick certainly qualifies in that. I sweat too much as a fat guy to be able to pull that off. You and mom go and work out, and then we'll just sit around at home for hours in your own stink and not be bothered by it. I got to shower right away. I am covered in salt and disgust.
I will say this. I've gone through stretches recently, and I work out quite a bit. I sweat quite a bit. I've gone through stretches recently where I haven't showered for multiple days, but, a little wet cloth to the nooks and crannies where the odor would exist. That's fine.
What?
Yeah. Is that fine?
No.
Is it really
it's not
fine?
It is fine.
No,
My wife
that's
does
not
complain
fine.
sometimes, yes.
Well, yeah, as she should. And your dog should run from you.
Don't you say that. You keep their names out of your mouth.
I was going to say, based on that, the only person getting less action at home than Tommy DeVito right now is Emerson.
Stop. All right, tonight, game of the week, week 11 around the NFL. A Super Bowl rematch? Yeah, possibly a Super Bowl preview, what we're going to see in Vegas in a few months. It's the Eagles at the Chiefs. Now, I can confirm, GoJo, that Taylor Swift won't be at this game. She's got a show tonight in Brazil. But there are rumors going around as well that the parents will be meeting still, but guys, we talked about it on the show yesterday on The Sweat, which you can see 8 to 10 Eastern Time on the weekend, DraftKings Network and VSiN. Is it weird to have the parents meeting, like, for the first time without her there?
No, I think that plays. I think at this point, this is already a relationship that's got some legs that we think has been going on for a little while here. And so I think the parents meeting still in an environment that has plenty of activities. Because, Dad, for the first meetup here, you don't want it to just be in some sterile living room where they got to sit there. Right. It's nice to have something else for them to watch, something for them to commiserate over, some other people there in the box. So I think this is actually the perfect. We talked about first date ideas. There was that list that those people put out about bad first date ideas, and they said a sporting event was one of them. I think for a parental first date where you've got a meeting like this, a sporting event is actually the perfect backdrop.
Unless it goes bad for what if Travis Kelce has a bad game?
Well, dude, I'm glad you mentioned that. Like the stats speak for themselves here, Senior. Like you look on paper and think there's 4 games he's played with her. There's 4 games he's played without her. And the games so he's got 2 touchdowns in both scenarios. But the games with her there, he has like 300 more receiving yards and like another 15 or 20 receptions as well. Like he steps it up. He brings his game up. Go ahead.
I don't care about her being there. That's not my point of her being there. To me, that means nothing. I mean his travel to South America, the travel, there and back.
That was last week, right?
No, I know. I understand that. But don't think it can't have an effect. That's my point. That will people make something out of that when you have a bye week and everybody thinks you should be resting your body? That's what the bye week's for. He's traveling. I don't buy into all that garbage about whether she's there, whether she's not there.
Really?
I mean, it's great. I love all. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I can say you're just flying in the face of numbers right now.
Yeah, buddy.
Apparently, you don't like math around here because the math says Taylor plus minus 300 yards.
Proceed with caution here, but at the same time, she's not there. GoJo. Like, imagine if you were actually dating someone.
I would also say with this, though, to Dad's point about the bye week thing, Dad, in all seriousness, you don't buy into that, do you? I mean, we had the weird narrative where the guys in New York were getting on Zach Wilson for going home during the bye and picking apples with his girlfriend. Like, you played 9 years in the NFL. You know plenty of guys do different things with their bye week. Some guys go home and try and get away for a little bit during that time period there. Travis's travel was a little bit more extensive, and people might make something out of that, but that guy's a future Hall of Famer who knows how to handle his business. So I struggle to look at this and say that's something that I'm actually going to believe has an effect on the outcomes.
I have zero worries about it. But what I asked is, will that talk start?
Okay.
That's my point. Are people, if he doesn't have a good game, God forbid it's a Philadelphia Eagle defense, which is a pretty good defense, by the way, that all of a sudden they say, oh, he's traipsing around. You can already read the headlines, right? Traveling around the world to see his girlfriend when he's not focusing enough on his football. You know that's coming if he doesn't play well.
Didn't he go to a World Series game this year? I think he went to a World Series game.
He went to a. He did. That to me is the most random bit of Travis Kelce travel. By the way, is the one random Rangers World Series game that he went to with seemingly no connection to anybody involved that I could find or ascertain. Then, guys, all of this is the backdrop though, and I want to stop for a second and take a minute to fully acknowledge. In the middle of November, we've got a Super Bowl rematch on Monday Night Football.
It's awesome.
Like this, we do not feel like we've been blowing this game up nearly enough as a sports watching world. There were some other good games and interesting headlines going into the NFL weekend. Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills coming off the firing of Ken Dorsey, coming back out and getting a win. That looked like something interesting. We've talked about some of the coaches on the hot seat. We've talked about the Dallas Cowboys railroading over the Carolina Panthers again and looking pretty good. Jacksonville and Detroit and everything they've done. You've got a Super Bowl rematch between two teams that people largely consider the two consensus best in the NFL right now, with a quarterback in Patrick Mahomes, who's the current best quarterback in the NFL until further notice, and Jalen Hurts, who's been an MVP candidate the last 2 seasons. It's insane that we're getting this on Monday Night Football, and I am so excited for this game, whether or not Taylor Swift is going to be there, which I would prefer her be there because, again, we know Travis Kelce's superpowers fully activate then. But, Dad, this is wild that we're getting this kind of quality matchup here. For someone that's called multiple Sunday Night Football games all season long, did a couple of Monday Nighters, this is far and away the best primetime game we've got on paper this season.
On paper, without question. And everybody will look at, obviously, Mahomes and Hurts and Travis Kelce and A.J. Brown as well. They should, and other stars as well. You know where I'm focusing, Mike? I'm focusing where you and I played. Think of these matchups. Tooney, Humphrey, Smith, left guard, center, right guard. Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, defensive interior lineman for the Eagles. That, you want to talk about battles within battles. I am so looking forward to that combination of players all hitting each other for basically 70 or 75 plays for the game. I know we'll get our big plays on and I understand that. We'll cover all of it, but but there is something about controlling the middle. We always talk about the defense. Control the middle all the way back, the middle from on the line to the middle of the field to the middle of the secondary. And this matchup, this could be the best interior offensive line in the league. And you would say that maybe about the Eagles as well, except they have replaced their right guard. So I would give the edge probably to Kansas City on the interior line, just the interior line in this as well. But these are the matchups, Mike, I'm really looking forward to.
Well, I think to that point, Cam Jurgens was back at practice, who was supposed to be the starter there. So, I think he should be back for the game tonight if I'm seeing the practice reports right from this week. But, Dad, the Eagles' offensive line probably is the best in the NFL overall, and they've got the most unique weapon in the sport in the brotherly shove. And so on both sides, because this Kansas City defense, not so quietly, has been the story of the season so far.
That's the better group on every level.
Patrick Mahomes admits hasn't played its best football and is trying to go out there and find that week after week. And Dad has a great opportunity to. I think outside of the matchups in the trenches that we're talking about, which are very exciting on both sides of the ball, the secondary for the Philadelphia Eagles during the bye had to be a big focus. We know that last outing against the Dallas Cowboys, they were able to move the ball a ton. Kevin Byard comes over at the trade deadline. It's another week for him to get more comfortable in the surroundings. We saw them get a little bit dinged up at the end of that Cowboys game with Bradbury and Slay. And so that matchup between them and this Kansas City Chiefs passing attack that's still looking for the down-in, down-out complement to Travis Kelce in that passing game has a real opportunity to try and get right against an Eagles secondary that's been searching for answers itself this season.
Yep, they have. The Eagles against the run have been pretty good. They have struggled against the pass, and the Chiefs defense overall ranks higher than Philadelphia, but they've been struggling a little bit against the run. So we'll see where each team attacks here. You expect the stars to be great here, but you always wait for that other person. What other person, maybe not one of the stars, is going to step up in this game? Because you know Travis gets his. You know A.J. Brown gets his. Turnovers become the factor again. You know you'll see the brotherly shove. And remember Kansas City, don't jump. If you're in the second position linebacker, do not leave your feet. You will just ride the wave. And could you imagine, I mean, if you just put Chris Jones right over Jason Kelce, and the matchup that is for Jason Kelce every single time they run one of these friggin' plays, of how that has to make them shorter and shorter. But you keep waiting for somebody to defense this play.
You talk about riding the wave here, Senior. Andy Reid's riding the wave after a bye week. We hear this every year, man. That record after a bye week with him, a pristine 21-3 during his 24 seasons as head coach. So he was 13-1 after a bye as a member of the Eagles, 8-2 now as a member and the coach of the Chiefs.
Yep, it is one of the surest bets in sports there. The Kansas City Chiefs at home, giving 3 in this game. Dad, I'm inclined to take the Chiefs in the points here. I think this is a big opportunity for them. Their other biggest matchup of the season at home was opening night against the Detroit Lions. They lost that one with 2 of their best players gone. I think those guys back in the lineup, they get it done tonight against this Philadelphia Eagles team. What about you?
I'm going with the Eagles in this one. I'm still waiting for them to really rely on somebody else other than Travis Kelce. It's Rashee Rice, the rookie right now, but can it be somebody else?
All right, so talking college football now, and Michigan winning its 1,000th game in program history. No, Coach Harbaugh was not on the sideline. No, he will not be there again when Michigan battles Ohio State next weekend. But following this dub, yes, offensive coordinator and acting head coach Sharon Moore mentioning how maybe they should have worked Coach Harbaugh into this pick.
First, we need to edit coach in there. There's enough technology in the world today that we can get that done, so we can do that. But I mean, it's historic to be a part of this university, this place, this team. So really cool just to be a part of it. The guys are just ecstatic to get that thousands win, but they all knew exactly what time it was right after that. They all know what's ahead. So I'm super excited for that challenge.
I love, again, how this team continues to act like Harbaugh died. He's just serving a suspension here, people. Like, the shirts, the signs, everything. It's ridiculous, Mike.
Yeah, it's been defiance every which way. People were making fun of them for having the Michigan flags that they used to block the sky cam from looking into their huddle, which I know Michigan fans have posted all the screenshots that they do that at certain stadiums in the past year. We're not letting the truth get in the way of a good joke here. It still looked weird and pretentious given the circumstances right now. But, Dad, they get that win. It is interesting in a world post-2020 where we did all those cardboard cutouts that they didn't have a cardboard Jim Harbaugh ready for that photo there. That seems like a real you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail type moment for a team that got every bit that they could from Maryland in that game, Dad. That Maryland passing attack to Tua Tagovailoa, to his younger brother, was shredding that Michigan secondary for large portions of this game in what seemed like a classic look-ahead, Dad. Like, I'm not going to use that necessarily to overall change my thoughts on Michigan, even though the AP did in this last poll. They put Ohio State now one spot above Michigan in the latest round of the AP poll and dropped Michigan down to 3 ahead of the game.
Yeah, which means nothing because they'll face each other obviously on the field. And if that defensive secondary got ripped up a little bit, hey, say hello to Marvin Harrison Jr. You know, I mean, my God, it's going to be really, really interesting. But real quick, going back to the 1,000 wins, just for everybody's edification, Michigan now has the most wins of any college team with 1,000. Next is Ohio State, 963, Alabama, 962, Texas, 945, Notre Dame, 945 as well. Those are the top 5 in college football all time. Everybody has played in the area of 1,325 to 1,380 some games, so in the area of the same amount of games. So Michigan first to 1,000, so congrats to them. And I agree with Sharon. I mean, with the modern technology, you'll be able to put, Harbaugh in that picture. And I don't care. I hope they do. I put them in there. Absolutely.
Probably not the time if you're Michigan to be talking about using technology to put people in places they're not supposed to be, given the backdrop of the season. I'm just saying. That's my own free advice there, but what do I know? I'm not a Photoshop expert, and I'm not endorsed for it on LinkedIn. So we'll have plenty of time to talk about that game in the lead-up, and Jim Harbaugh not going to be on the sideline for that now. We saw last week that after Michigan made the announcement that they're no longer going to be pursuing that injuncture. They accepted the Big Ten's come down there, that we saw their linebacker coach get fired in a way that was cryptic and did not offer a lot there. And so it seemed that we were right, Dad, in looking at that situation and saying there was probably something they found in getting ready for that court hearing that they knew could be more trouble for them if they kept barking up this tree with the Big Ten. Now, the NCAA, they still have to contend with, but they decided to saw off their arm to save the rest of their body because they knew what was coming down the pipes in terms of that firing. So they avoid that now in the Big Ten, but that means Jim Harbaugh, in addition to not being in the class picture for Win 1000, will also not be in the class picture for whatever happens this weekend against Ohio State. We'll have plenty more time to get into that, the fallout from Michigan, and yet another round of weirdness with them, what the actual game will look like between them and Ohio State. But, Dad, I do want to get to this. I know we usually do a lot of college football on a Tuesday and not Monday, but the Jordan Travis injury to Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis, a gruesome leg injury in their win against North Alabama, has really changed a lot of the feel around what can happen at the end of this college football season. First and foremost, Jameis Winston gave a beautiful speech talking about how he was thinking about Jordan Travis at that time. Jameis was back having his jersey retired at Florida State, but certainly want to echo all thinking and praying for Jordan Travis, who's been a sensational story at Florida State and player for them. Just do not watch the injury if you haven't seen it. It looked really bad for his lower leg. He's not going to be back out there for the rest of this season. And so, Dad, now this team has a really interesting problem on its hands on its own, because they were a team that looked like a CFP favorite, undefeated in the ACC, getting ready to take on a Florida Gators team that just gave Missouri hell this last weekend. So that's not a foregone conclusion. And even if they were to get past that, Dad, now face Louisville, who notches their place in the ACC championship with a win this last weekend. Uncertain future for the ACC, Dad. That feels like that could have been the death knell for the conference in terms of their college football playoff hopes.
So bottom line here is I think we know that if they go undefeated, if they win these next 2 games, beat Florida and Louisville, they're going to be in. Undefeated, they're going to be in, whether they have their top quarterback or not. To win these 2 games would be pretty impressive. They're going to be undefeated, they're going to be in. If you start talking about a loss somewhere, and you still have a 1-win ACC champ, whether it's now, if they lose to Florida, they're still in the ACC championship game, correct? Playing Louisville, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
And then you have a 1-loss ACC team, whether it's Florida State or whether it's Louisville, who's playing some ball and sitting there at number 9. I think, unfortunately, Mike, they could be a conference that could be left out, because as much as whatever you want to tell 13 human beings about looking forward to something, if Florida State is a 1-loss team with other 1-loss teams vying for that 4th spot or one of the top 4 spots, you're a human being. You have to realize they don't have their starting quarterback, one of the stars of their team, and how that could hurt them in the Final Four.
And the committee is supposed to look at that thing. It's a human committee, so they're taking into account who is available to you, who's injured in certain games, and certainly that is a bit of what's to come for this football team. But I'm with you, Dad. If you end up with a 1-loss ACC champion, they're not getting in, barring some things happening in other spots, because you would either potentially have an undefeated Washington as your Pac-12 champ, or a 1-loss Oregon avenging their only loss of the season, provided they get through Oregon State this weekend. But I'm saying, if you play out the eventualities, if you were to have 1-loss conference champion in the ACC versus a 1-loss conference champion or a no-loss conference champion in the Pac-12 and a 1-loss conference champion Texas in the Big 12, both of those teams are getting in over a 1-loss ACC champion, based on what the committee's already told us about how they feel about Florida State through this point of the season.
Absolutely agree. What a monkey wrench to be thrown in if Alabama, just kind of gliding along, were to knock off Georgia in the SEC championship game. Then it's Georgia with a loss, Alabama with a loss, but beating the top team. Then you could have, you'll have a Big Ten team that's undefeated, but the other team that loses, if it's a close game, Ohio State or Michigan with 1 loss. Possibly the Pac-12 champ with 1 loss, the Big 12 champ with 1 loss. It's going to get it could get really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think looking as far as, because I always like to say we can game out a bunch of different galaxy brain scenarios about what happens if 2 or 3 teams lose, or what happens if Washington gets upset by Washington State in the Apple Cup this weekend. But in terms of outcomes that have actual likelihood to them, where you could say, and Vegas might reflect this, Alabama upsetting Georgia in the SEC championship game seems like the outcome that is the most likely of those to actually happen, and would have the most far-reaching effects for the rest of this in terms of who gets in, are there multiple teams from the same conference, how that all gets organized. I'm completely with you based on the way that Alabama's been playing. They get an easy win over, Chattanooga this weekend, so didn't really have to breathe too heavy in that one. But now you got the weirds of the Iron Bowl coming up that, Dad, we never want to discount there, but Hugh Freeze's Auburn, coming fresh off of one of those payday losses, doesn't feel like they're walking into this with their full arsenal.
Listen, if you're any conference but the SEC, you are hoping Georgia just goes undefeated and just beats Alabama in the SEC championship game. That knocks Alabama out of this thing. That it's just Georgia from the SEC, and no talk of should Alabama be there if they beat Georgia. So that's what everybody is looking for. Just get one team from the SEC, and the way to do that is for Georgia to take care of their business the rest of the way through.
And again, all of this becomes a conversation, unfortunately, because of what happened with Jordan Travis in that Florida State team. We'll finish it off with this, that, and third next. All right, guys, time to finish off the show where we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you off on into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe us, rate us, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern. But if you can't, for whatever reason, you can get us wherever you get your podcast. Each hour will be podcast on its own. And you can get us right here on YouTube immediately after the show ends at 10 a.m. So you don't got to wait anytime if you want to hear and see our smiling faces. Guys, let's get to this, that, and the third, and start off with this. This is one of the coolest stories in sports, and we had been meaning to get to it for a while, and shame on me for not pushing it up the flagpole earlier on here. As Aaron Matson and North Carolina pull off an unbelievable feat in the world of college field hockey. They win their 5th title in the last 6 years. And why is this special, you ask? Because Aaron Matson is just recently graduated. She won the previous 4 championships as a player, and then immediately upon graduating took over as the head coach this year as, I believe, a 23-year-old, and won in a 2-1 shootout against Northwestern this weekend to notch now her first national title as a coach. We have seen a lot of players go right from the hardwood, usually in basketball, straight to the bench in something like the NBA. But Dad, for someone who was on that team with these players last year to go out now and turn around and be able to coach them like this is, 1, incredible for her, and 2, deeply embarrassing for every coach that just got the dog walked on them by this recent college graduate.
Listen, this is amazing. I mean, this is big time Division I, and this isn't just winning a few games. This is winning a national championship after you were a player. Imagine when you were 23, 24 years old, just finishing college. She's a little older than the 21 or 22 you normally do, but finishing. Imagine then just turning around and becoming the head coach of whatever college sport you played and leading that team. It blows my mind. I mean, she could be imagine the length of time she could be a coach if she wanted to, starting out that early. Because if you go through a lot of coaches' resumes, you Wikipedia an NFL coach and go about his background, you're going to see so many stops, and you're going to see him mostly starting after their collegiate career is over. They become a GA somewhere for a few years and an intern for a little while, not directly a head coach like Aaron did. So it is an incredible story to not only win as a player, but then to take over that team and win a championship yet again.
She is the career scoring leader in the ACC and the NCAA tournament herself with 137 goals and 337 points. At 16, she became the youngest player to join the U.S. national team. So she is a full-on juggernaut. She seems to be the greatest thing that this sport has ever had to offer. And now you're right. She is going to be the scourge for everybody else who already saw in year one coming in was able to pull off this kind of moment. So congratulations to Erin Matson and North Carolina's field hockey for going out there and doing the damn thing. Emerson, let's get to that. And speaking of doing the damn thing, roster cuts happen in the NFL. Roster movement happens all the time. I have never seen a 51-year-old cut from an NFL team before. This one feels new.
I was going to say, we're going from the NCAA's youngest Division I head coach to win a national championship to maybe the oldest dude who's ever been cut by an NFL team here. So, yeah, the Eagles officially waived offensive lineman Bernard Williams from the organization's reserve/suspended list. He has not played in the NFL since '94. All right, so he just missed Golic by a season or two there in Philly.
Yeah, season.
So he was suspended 6 games for the use of marijuana, then received a ban for the remainder of the season. Dude never applied for reinstatement here and just has remained on the team's suspended list ever since.
So what happened was the NFL every now and then kind of clears away some bookkeeping issues, and this was players on reserve lists, and they were trying to clear it out, and they realized, and then called Philadelphia and said, "You realize this guy from 1994, you never cleared him off your reserve list?" And he's been on there, so basically part of the Eagles since 1994 as a bust first-round draft pick, so they finally released him off that list.
51, he was out driving his Amazon delivery route earlier in the week when he got a text from some dude who's like, "Bro, you were just released by the Eagles."
By the way, I hate the SB Nation account for saying he's now eligible to be claimed by any team in the NFL.
Oh, I know.
They're so foul for that. That is so beyond foul. But Dad, 2 questions that I have here. Well, one's a question, one's a statement. One is he now, because he was on this reserve list, a 2-time Super Bowl champion? Yes. Because he's been on the team technically. They had to cut him. So is he now 2-time Super Bowl champion, Bernard Williams? And the other question is this the actual original inspiration for the movie Office Space? Because he is Milton from Office Space. He is a clerical error. He was fired, and he's been receiving paychecks, and now is down having his office as storage B at this point. So maybe we need to remake Office Space since we're going to keep doing that, but do it with Bernard Williams and the Eagles instead.
Has anyone seen his stapler? That's the question we need an answer to.
See my stapler. And the biggest difference here is Bernard Williams has not been getting paychecks. I'm sure he would have loved to have been getting paychecks.
That we know of.
No, he has not been getting paychecks. I guarantee you the Eagles would have figured that one out before the league figured that one out. If they had been actually cutting this guy, it'd be like what was Coming to America when they're cutting the checks to the guy who's getting the inside information. Who is this person? It's Bernard Williams, former first-round pick. He's now 51 years old. Just give me that check. I'll handle it.
I listen. Stranger things have happened. Bernard, by the way, if you're listening and you have been receiving those checks, here's what I'm going to tell you to do. Yeah. You don't say anything. You don't tell anybody. You don't make them alert to any of that. If they figure it out after the fact, you know who's not going to say anything publicly? The Eagles, because that would be humiliating for Howie Roseman, who's lauded as this GM, and for an organization that gets all the front office credit in the world. It'd be pretty embarrassing if you had been paying a 51-year-old driving an Amazon truck to play for your football team all of this time. So they're not going to talk about it, and you don't need to talk about it. That money is yours, and it's going to stay yours, and you have earned it however you deem that necessary to justify in your head.
You got to get this guy on the show. You guys need to talk to this dude.
Yes, we do.
That was that was an area where they really had a lot of bad first-round picks. Anton Davis, offensive tackle, was there when I was there. He was a bust. Leonard Renfro, after I had left, a D-tackle, he was a bust. Mike Mamula, remember the workout warrior at the Combine, what he did, and he was a bust. And obviously Bernard Williams. So, yeah, they had struggled right in that area of first-round picks.
Dad slipping in the first rounder. The slander that on his way out was the guy that Philadelphia put in there over him. You see what you lost. You see what you guys gave away and the decisions you made, Philadelphia. You should be ashamed of yourselves there. You ruined a perfectly good thing, and you let him walk out of the building there.
Senior, don't give up, man. You could go back. This guy played till he was 51.
He didn't play.
That is true. Roster spot's open now, Dad.
Yeah.
Philadelphia Eagles, they need to claim my father off waivers now. They've got the opportunity to fill their quota for 50-plus-year-olds on this roster. Guys, go
I
ahead,
would
Dad.
fit right in there with Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and Fletcher Cox. Yeah, let's move on, shall we?
I was going to say, hey, listen.
Let's get to the third here and get to...
Williams played in the Canadian Football League, and it's all smiles and pure satisfaction in the Canadian Football League from the Montreal Alouettes. They won their first Grey Cup since 2010, pulling off the upset victory here, Junior, over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the 110th Grey Cup, 28-24. They were 7.5-point underdogs.
I can tell you this.
Oh.
Congratulations to them. Didn't watch a lick of the CFL this year. Appreciate the CFL. Moonlighted in training camp with the CFL. Dad, your late father played in the CFL, so this is your ballpark here. The Montreal Alouettes, one of the teams that my grandpa Lou played for.
Yep, he played for Montreal. He played for Saskatchewan. He played for Hamilton. We still have the satin Hamilton tie cat jacket with the tiger cat on the back of it. It's an awesome jacket. Sick. But yeah, my dad spent his entire football career after college, in the CFL. So I always love seeing that. You know, every now and then I catch a little bit of it, not a ton of it. But congrats to Montreal. As Emerson said, hadn't won one since 2010, and Winnipeg had been there for about 4 years in a row. So congrats to Montreal on the late drive for the win and the cup.
You're just celebrating pretty hard
there.
Right now.
I bet they are. I did one training camp up there, and ever since then, every time I do a hit for a TSN radio station, I am introduced as Montreal Alouettes alumni. Some of them will even say legend. That's not for me to say. That's for them to say.
On your
if you
LinkedIn
agree,
page.
download, subscribe, rate, review this podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating. Have a great night. Enjoy Monday Night Football. We'll talk to you tomorrow.